Today we start with Psalm 102, and it is a song of remembrance, a psalm of remembering who God is and that He is there to protect you. He is there when you're in trouble. He is there when you're feeling down and when you're feeling afflicted. Hear my prayer, O Lord, and let my cry come unto thee. Hide not thy face from me in the day when I am in trouble. Incline thine ear unto me in the day when I call upon answer me speedily. So the idea is someone's in trouble and they're in hard times, they're facing difficulty. And here he talks about his enemies coming up before him. And this is one of those psalms that has a lot of eloquence to it. This one is a little more reminiscent of some of the earlier psalms. Seems like those that have to deal with either iniquity or having the enemy, the evil people, bandying around you, that he uses a lot of figurativisms when he's calling out to God. For my days are consumed like smoke. See, he's beginning right here. And my bones are burned as hearth. My heart is smitten and withered like grass, so that I forget to eat my bread. He is in a place of very hardness, a place of sadness. For reason of the voice of my groanings, my bones cleave to my skin. I am like a pelican in the wilderness. I am like an owl in the desert. Again, a place of solitude. And I watch and am as a sparrow alone upon the housetop. Mine enemies approach me all the day, and they are mad against me, sworn against me. And this thing goes on with this type of moaning and groaning in affliction and in pain and in fear and in loneliness. But thou, O Lord, shall endure forever. You're remembering who God is. Even if he hasn't moved into the situation yet, this psalm reminds us to go to who he is. In your remembrance shall thy, O Lord, shall endure forever, and thy remembrance unto all generations. Thou shalt arise and have mercy upon Zion, for the time to favor her, yea, the set time is come. The idea that I'm looking forward to your coming and rectifying the situation. For thy servants take pleasure in her stones and favor the dust thereof, so that the heathen shall fear the name of the Lord and all the kings of the earth in thy glory. When you rescue and they see how powerful you rescue, they will give glory. They will know that there is a God that is taking care of Zion. But he is in this place, though, before deliverance. Having faith before deliverance is faith. Looking at the character of God who will deliver. That's what this psalm is really leaning towards. To declare the name of the Lord in Zion and the praise in Jerusalem when the people are gathered together and the kingdom is serve the Lord. He weakened my strength in the way. He shortened my days. I said, O Lord, God, take not away in the midst of my days the years throughout all generations. Of old thou hast laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the work of thy hands. In remembrance of his eternity, remembrance of that he has always been merciful, even when there is times of chastisement. Remembering him is really what this psalm goes to. But thou art the same, and thy years shall no end. The children of thy servants shall continue, and their seed shall be established before thee. The idea that you are such a great God that you will not just take care of us in this situation, but you will take care of the generations to come. And again, a psalm about affliction, but looking at the character of God and believing what he will do, even to future generations, that this person has hope, but he's still sitting in affliction. Again, a very powerful psalm that deals with something that most of us go through, feeling afflicted and alone and wondering, is God really going to move? Read this carefully, do your grid work on it. You'll see some of the things that I'm saying, and hopefully they'll give you peace when you face affliction. Going back to Judges 19. So an interesting thing, we have the story moving on. Again, we see that these stories kind of overlap and they'll keep moving. We've gone through all the judges, and we went through Samson. We went through Jephthah. We talked about Micah and how Micah had set up this God, or this image, but he was praying to the Jehovah God through this image, and he had built him up a bit of a small form of Judaism there. He had made his son consecrated priest. He had had a Levite, and he was wanting to hear and to be blessed by the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he does this, and so that when the Danites are fighting, they hear about this epoch, they hear about this Levite, they hear about Manoah. They go to get blessing, and they find out God will bless, so they go back, and with 500 men, the Danites take this epoch and take the Levite, and they go and they conquer, and they take Lachish. They wanted to expand their borders, so they take this land, which God told them to take. God told them right after, remember with Joshua, when Joshua was dying, that you guys still have land to take. Go take the land that you haven't taken. And here Dan has grown, and the tribe went off and take more of the land. And so that land belongs to Dan even unto this day. And they set up Micah's graven image, and all the house was at Shiloh. Now again, the graven image is not, again, God is working with this, but the people of God are nestling around Shiloh. It seems like they're not nestling around Jerusalem at this time, because Jerusalem is just, going through the motions, as we'll see later on with Phineas and some of his sons, Eli and some of his sons, who are using the temple only for ceremonial, not for heart. So here, there's a Levite who goes out, because it reminds us in a day that there was Levites, that there was not a king telling people what to do. People did what was right in their own eyes. There was a Levite who went. He had a wife who was a concubine. She went a-whoring away from him and went back to her father's house in Bethlehem, Judah. He goes down to reconcile and bring her back. He stays there a few days, and on his way back, he goes and he and a servant stop in a place in this area of Benjamin called Gilboa. They stop in Gilboa to spend the night. And so when they're at Gilboa, it turns into this Sodom and Gomorrah type of thing. Remember when the angels went in and they met Lot, and Lot tells them, don't stay in the streets, come in the house. And then all the men came out to know them and circled the house. We see the same parallel here, that Sodom and Gomorrah-ish activities are going on in Benjamin, in Israel. This is happening, and this is an affront to God, that God had told them not to go whoring after other gods. If you do, you will land in these areas, and this is an affront to me. And so this form of hypersexuality and homosexuality was happening in the tribe of Benjamin, in Gilboa, and some of the other surrounding cities. And so this man with his concubine and his wife go into Gilboa. They can't find any place to stay, but finally a man allows them lodging. And as they're lodging, there's these men come up called the men of Belial. And I looked that up, Belial. These are the hypersexuals. These are the homosexuals. These are the abominable ones who do abominable things. These are the evil ones. These are the ones who turn against God and want to do things their own way. The sons of Belial. They beset the house, and they wanted to bring the man out, and they say here that we may know him. The idea, again, of having homosexual sex with this man. Now, the master of the house offers the concubine and his daughter to these men, and they get angry, and they get angry because they're not getting to do what they want to do with the man. But they don't hearken, and they give the concubine to these men. They abuse her all night, and in the morning they find that that woman is dead. She had been killed. And so what happened was, the Levite left, took the woman, cut her into 12 pieces, and sent her off as testimony to the other tribes, that they would know what is happening in Benjamin. So the tribes learn about it, and they get up in arms to move against Benjamin. They do that primarily because they know that if this is happening in Gilboa and the surrounding area, if this is happening in Benjamin, God's going to get mad and blame everyone. He's going to drop the bomb on everyone. He's done this before. We've seen this pattern. He even warned us what happens if we take a blind eye to this. So they went in, and Israel in 20 started creating an army to go against Benjamin. Now let me stop and say, before you think that Christians should be fighting and killing homosexuals, that's not where this is going. I will say this again. Every time Israel take arms, I have to warn us that we are the ambassadors of Christ. We are called not to take arms with flesh and blood, except in self-defense, but in principalities and powers. That's what we're called. That's where we are called to do our battles. Our battles are not with flesh and blood. He has tried that with flesh and blood, and it didn't work. All you did was wind up killing people. But the root of the problem, sin, always made its way up. The tares were always there. One day he's going to take care of that by removing every bit of it from the earth. But until then, we are to be ambassadors. So don't take your swords. Don't start fighting physically with these people. Be defensive, though, if you get attacked. But here we see Israel rises against Benjamin. Now, the numbers here are crazy because you get 400,000 men going up against 26,000. You would think Benjamin would stop and go, whoa, wait a minute. We can't win this game. But the people of Benjamin seem to dig their heels in. When you see in chapter 20 here, that sometimes also you see that these men of Belial, they get all in their own mind, and they get all about what they want. And they go in. So they rise up against them, and they talk about the concubine, and the men are going up against Gilboa. And in 20 it talks about that the children of Benjamin were numbered 26,000, but you'll number all the men of Israel besides Benjamin were numbered 400,000 that drew the sword. And so Benjamin went up against Israel, and of course Benjamin loses. The children of Benjamin go forth, and what happens is interesting. They go forth into a battle and win with the first group of Israelites. Then they go to a second battle, and the Benjaminites, the Gilboites, win. So they're getting all frosty now. They've been winning these battles, and Israel is turning to God. The third time, they set up the same thing they did with Ai. Remember with Ai, right after Jericho, the men of Ai got, they got all full of themselves. They got self-confident, and they left the city. And Joshua had set up fronts on one side, ran away from them, and then these fronts moved in from behind them and trapped the army of Ai. And they went and burned the city. Same thing was going to happen here. You would think the Benjamites would at least know their own history. Israel draws them out, and they have men lying in wait behind them. Then at a certain point, these men move in. They move into the city. There's burning. Same thing that happened with Ai. The men of Benjamin now lose heart and start turning back. Then the Israelites behind them and beside them move them in. And all the Benjamites were killed. They say that 25,000. That day, it says in 46 of 20, and that day there fell of Benjamin 20 and 5,000 that drew the sword. Now, they only had 26. So they lost everybody down to 1,000 fighting men. Now, this doesn't mean there weren't other men around. This just means that these were the fighting men between 20 and 50. And so they took Benjamin's sword in every city they came to, and they set fire to it in all the cities that they came to. They didn't kill all the inhabitants, but they did. Israel does a bad thing here. When you get to 21, they open their mouth. Remember with Jephthah, it seems like we're always going back into the past to see something that comes back. Jephthah made a rash vow. Well, here is Israel making a rash vow in 21. They vowed to God that they were so angry with what Benjamin has done and maybe trying to appease God and get on God's side that they shut off their mouth and said, we will not give any of our daughters to Benjamin to have wives with, so they won't be having kids. Now, this is a problem, because also that means that there won't be a whole 12 tribes. Now you're going to lose a tribe completely. They realized that, and that was a big problem. Remember, God had made this problem to Abraham. Then it went through Isaac and Jacob and the 12 sons. Benjamin was one of the 12 sons. And that promise needed to go through all 12 sons. Where here, Israel had shot off their mouth and said, we're not going to give any of our wives to Benjamin, to the surviving males of Benjamin, those that are under 20. We're not going to do that. Well, this is the problem now. Thanks, guys. They repented from this. It talks about in 21. And God comes up with a couple of answers. Number one is that, was there anybody that didn't go to war against Benjamin? And they found an area in Jerusalem, or not in Jerusalem, in Judea that didn't go. Now, because you didn't go, you should have gone. See, it's kind of a strange trying to get into the mind of what's happening here. God wanted them to go root out the sin that was in Benjamin, and he wanted them to go as one nation and wanted every community to go. And there's a community that decided not to go. Now, if you're not going, maybe you're agreeing with Benjamin. Maybe you don't care about that sin. So God takes the women from that area. He actually takes, Israel takes a sword to that area and takes the women that haven't known men and allows them to be the wives of Benjamin. There's still not enough wives to go around. When we end the book of Judges, we have a strange thing going on, which I don't think was covered very carefully when I was in Bible school. There's still not enough women. So God says, well, there's a worship time in Shiloh. There's a time when the daughters of Shiloh go out to dance with the timbers, and it says here, they go out to dance, and they go out into the vineyards, and catch you every one his wife of the daughters of Shiloh, and go to the land of Benjamin. And it shall be said, when their fathers and the brethren come out to us, you shall say to them, be favorable unto us for our sakes, because we reserved not each man to his own wife in the war, and you did not give yourselves at that time, so you should be guilty. The idea that God gave the women of Shiloh. Now again, this was where people were worshiping the one true God at that time. Think about it. Who would be the best wives to go to the men of Benjamin? Who would be the best wives to be the mothers of the children of Benjamin, so that this sin doesn't keep growing again? So the women of Shiloh went and ministered as wives and mothers in Benjamin, so that Benjamin might be a part of believing Israel again. Now, I know that the people don't like this. They tend to infer that this is a rape situation, and it's not. The closest you get to that is a forced marriage. Now, a lot of times also, well, then God is for forced marriages. Well, think about this. Before the 18th century or 17th century, most marriages in the world were forced marriages. People didn't really marry for love. They married for resources, or for political alliances, or for economic gain, or for other strategies. And I'm sorry to say that women were not treated well. In fact, it was Judeo-Christian values that lifted women out of just chattel, as of just resources to be handed around, of little trinkets to go between kings, or ambassadorships, or political alliances, or economic alliances. Here, you take my wife, or I'll take your daughter, or the wife for my son, or something. Women were used this way. It was the Bible that actually lifted women up. In fact, all of this problems happened because homosexuals and hypersexual men killed one woman. But that was enough to start the fire. That wasn't enough to tell Israel that there's a big sin going here, that God's going to come and stomp this fire out and stomp on us if we don't do something about it. So again, that's lifting up of the woman. Here we've seen the daughters of Zephelahed. They're able to own land. We see women like Deborah were able to go to war and get glory. She didn't fight, but she got glory because she was the leader at the time. Yeah, we saw Delilah with some problems. We saw the angel of the Lord talk with the wife of Manoah. He didn't go to Manoah and say, your wife is going to have a son. He went to the wife first. And it was the wife that brought Manoah on board. So we see women being lifted up. In fact, Sarah, even though she had the problem with Hagar, she was considered a faithful woman. I mean, if we can forgive Noah, if we can forgive Abraham, if we can forgive Adam, we can forgive Sarah. She was still, we can't find that she did anything wrong other than that one time. I mean, look at David when we get to him. He does two big things wrong, worse than any. There's not a woman in the Bible that did worse than what David would wind up doing, having adultery and then killing the husband of this woman. So again, I'm pulling this back into perspective, that this is a form of forced marriage to bring back Benjamin into the promise. So we see that, but here we end with a very negative note. And in those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. This is a sad point to leave this book. We'll be going through, or I'll be going through, Book of Ruth next. But the idea is we will pick this up in Samuel, and Samuel will be a recurrent theme. And again, Ruth happens kind of within the book of Samuel. Ruth is the grandmother of David. So when we get closer to David, kind of in that area is where Ruth would be. So we're going to go ahead and do Ruth, and then we'll jump back into the story. But here we've learned everything from Judges, that there was this roller coaster of sin, righteousness, then judgment, and unrighteousness and judgment, calling out to God, Him delivering, and then the same thing moves again, wash, rinse, repeat. We see this happening. We end on a down note here, but to be continued. Every one of these Bibles, until you get to Revelation, they all tend to end with a be continued. So here we are, end of Judges, to be continued. Thank you.